Hello Aquarius, and welcome to your bi-weekly-ish reading. So we are looking at the new moon to the full moon, what is happening during this, approximate 2-week phase, pretty much. So this particular reading is going to be a little bit different than my normal new moon to full moon readings, and that is because we have some pretty notable astrology that's happening during this phase, and I felt like we could use a little extra guidance, because why not? So interesting, cool. I say that a lot, don't I? Interesting. So this is a collective reading for, there it is. Was that one it, or was it that? Oh, let's keep shuffling until I'm not going to do that game. So this is a collective reading for the Aquarius sun or rising signs. We are looking at some extra cards for extra guidance because of the solar eclipse that we have happening on the 19th, and I'll talk a little bit about that. Normally these videos are about 5 to 8 minutes long, but they've been turning out to be around about 20 kind of minutes long. That's what that's about how long it's taking to get through these, because we're going to talk about some of the astrology happening with the solar eclipse and also with the Mercury retrograde that's happening a couple of days later. So let's get some spiritual advice. We'll go through these individually as we always do. I just want to lay out the cards completely so that we can just run through them. You guys are the first ones where I'm just like, I keep hesitating and needing to keep shuffling. It's pretty funny. And I'm feeling my speech go a little bit tongue-tied with a few of my videos. So I think I'm not a big proponent of the whole, everyone freak out, it's Mercury retrograde. But I do notice that some of them I feel the effects of more than others, and others it feels like nothing's happening. We'll talk about that. All right, so here is what we've got going on for you. So before I talk a little bit about the astrology that I want to point out to you, I'm not going to go over all the astrology. This isn't an astrology video, but I do like to incorporate a little bit of what's happening so you guys understand what to expect and how this all relates to your reading, right? So keeping with the deck that we've been using for a little while now, people have said that it's really helpful for them, is knowing how to focus this, because it is a collective reading and it's not like a one-to-one reading. It can sometimes, I know, be a little difficult to go well, which area of my life is this applying to? So we look at either which area or which theme comes up with this particular deck. You guys are the first ones to actually get a house card. Everyone else has been getting planet cards. So we have the 10th house, which is pretty direct and straightforward, right? The 10th house has a lot to do. It's a very public house, right? It's very out in the public. It's at the high point of our charts, right? And it has to do with our career, our purpose, what we're creating in this world. It says authority there. I would say that because it's connected to Saturn, because it's ruled by Saturn, I would say that yes, it does somewhat have to do with authority. But the 10th house has to do with what we're trying to master, what we're trying to be purposeful about, what we're dedicated to, what we're committed to creating with regard to usually to our purpose, to our career path, in that way. So some people like to say it can represent something to do with the father. I'm not sure that I necessarily see enough correlations with that, but if that feels resonant for you, take that. So yes, this is like reaching the mountaintop. You see the guy that's even there, you can even see, that's perfect. I don't know if I remember noticing that before, but this guy is he's trekking to make it up to the mountaintop, right? And that's what the Capricorns do, which Capricorn rules the 10th house, Saturn, right? It's about reaching that pinnacle point, right? It's about maturation and integrity and devotion and dedication and to the craft that we have, to moving forward, to becoming a master in our field of something, right? Becoming masterful. So that's how we're going to focus this reading. That's what we're going to be pointing it back towards for everything that we're reading about this. I did pull a shadow card from one of my shadow decks, and mainly because of the eclipse and the eclipse season. So let's just talk about that really quickly for a couple of minutes so that you have an understanding of what's actually happening. So on April 19th, we have the new moon and solar eclipse happening at 9:13 p.m. Pacific time. So it is happening in Aries in tropical astrology and also in Aries in sidereal astrology. So if you don't follow sidereal, just don't even worry about that. I do find, however, when there is this point where they're both matching up in the same signs, so I'll back up for a second. Typically with sidereal and tropical, you'll find that one planet will be in one sign and the other will be in one sign over. So when they do come together in the same sign, I feel like that is the purest form of alignment and congruency with that particular energy, with that particular planetary movement and transit. So here we actually have them matching up at a really potent time. The new moon, the solar eclipse, they're coming together in Aries. Aries is this really combustible, cardinal start of energy. It's a burst of energy. Think about spring in tropical astrology. Aries starts off the spring. It starts to burst forth life, right? We have that energy burst. And it's very fiery, right? So that's what we have happening on the 19th. And that is our new moon point, right? It's the beginning of eclipse season. We have 2 eclipse seasons every year. This is the first one for this year. And then we have our next eclipse, which is a lunar eclipse that's happening on May 5th. We'll talk about that some other time, not today, but just to know that for yourself. And then 2 days later, we have Mercury going retrograde on April 21st at 1:35 p.m. a.m. Pacific. And that is happening in Taurus in tropical astrology, and it's happening in Aries in sidereal astrology. So you can feel kind of like this is a lot that's happening, and that's why I wanted to bring it to our attention and pull some extra cards. When it comes to eclipses and eclipse season, this is a time of like grand ushering in and grand exiting out, right? It's the tide, right? It's the ebb and flow of the tides, right? And so this happens to be a time where people typically are nervous. People get nervous around eclipse season. I can say that I still do, because it's definitely, I think, requires for us to be in a certain state of allowing and flow and being present to perceive what's unfolding. And I would say that that is definitely something to pay attention to with this particular new moon solar eclipse, right? This is going to be activating in a lot of ways. So it'll be activating energy in your chart wherever Aries occupies your chart. So if you're not sure where exactly that is, make sure you're following me on Instagram, because I'm going to release probably tomorrow. Well, this video is probably not going to go up that early, but I'm going to be releasing a video, so you'll be able to check out where this solar eclipse is going to be activating in your chart. And that energy is definitely going to be felt all the way through till this next eclipse on the 5th, right? And even beyond, but we won't get into that. So that's what we can take a look at, is like this is going to be activating. And so it may really bring in some things for you. It may activate and really bring to the surface some new experiences in a certain area of your life, like friends, family, work, wherever it is in your chart. So definitely, if you want to know how to look at that, you can follow me on Instagram, and you'll find that video there. I'll have that up. So, and also when we have Mercury retrograde, if you want to know like what area of Mercury retrograde is going to be having an impact on, or like having you kind of like slow down, revise, revisit, and like slow things down in, you can look to where, if you're following tropical astrology, where Taurus is in your chart, or you can look at where Aries is in your chart for that same place if you're someone who follows sidereal. So that just all to be said is like these are pretty big places, like moments in our year when we have eclipses happen. And because of the light eclipsing being eclipsed, it casts all of these shadows, right? That's what happens, is it casts shadows. And so with that, as the mirror is like as above, so below, we have this experience where it can kind of like move things to the surface of from our psyche, that stir in the darker realms and the shadows and the back hallways of our psyche and our hearts and our minds, right? The things that we tend to sweep under the rug, especially because this particular one is going to be squared by Pluto. And Pluto is also about going deep, right? It's about the taboo and like sex and death and like all of these things. Is about going deep and wanting to like really be like in deep conversation, deep experience, deep connection, like deep, intimacy. And also it's the place where we want to and tend to sweep under the rug the things that we find grotesque, like we want to push them back into the dark corners and not to have to pay attention to them. And so this is going to possibly bring up some of those shadows. So you might see that coming through experiences in the outside world, or you might be experiencing this more like internally. And so with that said, I wanted to pull from my shadow deck and see what shadow might be something that I would behoove you to work with during this period of time, right? During this eclipse season. Because when we can prep and prepare, that's like what I love about tarot, what I love about astrology, is when we are informed and we have an understanding, we can pivot and we can be able to adjust and prepare and be in more flow so that it's maybe not as jolting, and some of that can't be helped, but we can at least have more informed experience. So with that, the shadow card, and let's just say really quickly, everyone has shadows. I don't care if you are like the most spiritual, like I've done so much work for years and decades of my life on myself. We all still have skeletons in our closet, shadows, limiting beliefs to deal with. So, and we all have many different versions of that, like whether we're like, we worked with it a lot and it's like pretty well integrated, or whether it's like there's still pieces that aren't so well integrated and they still kind of come up in certain ways, right? So here we have downcast pride. And what I want to say about the card that has to do with pride, it's like, what do I want to say about that? So I think that we can probably all agree that there is a way to really celebrate and have like be proud of ourselves. And then there's a way in which it's not so healthy and it can be kind of toxic, right? So that's one part of it. And the other part of it, I think, is just this, how do I want to say it? Like when I think of the downcast pride card, I'm thinking of the ways in which we kind of, like we dim our shine, right? We make a habit of like bending over backwards in order to make other people not feel uncomfortable in our presence with the ways in which we do shine. And we don't really, I think it's like a dampening of like the healthy version of what pride could be in our experience. I hope that makes sense. So relating this back to your work life, your 10th house, right? Your very public house, right? Where you're very seen in the space, like whether you feel seen or not, it's like you can't hide in the sunlight, right? In the light. So this is where like your career or your work or whatever is. And so just kind of noticing like where this particular theme might be coming up inside of this sphere, inside of this space, right? Sorry, you guys, I'm getting over a cold. I have to pause sometimes for a couple seconds. So the spiritual advice that we have coming through is the Death card. And I really actually do like that the Death card is coming through, especially during a new moon solar eclipse. I know that typically we think of releasing and getting rid of as being the full to new moon phase when things are waning. So I know that that's typically when we think of it. However, with an eclipse, I feel like that kind of changes the game a little bit. Like I said, this is a time of like ushering in and like things moving out. And so I feel like with this, in regard to this, your spiritual advice is saying like, hey, like there's might be some people, some limiting beliefs, some shadows, some things to work with where it's like, this is no longer serving you and it's time to bury them, like put them to rest, lay them to rest in the ground and let them go. Whether it's conversations, whether it's people, whether it's projects, maybe whether it's like connections with coworkers or whatever it is, right? Like it can look a lot of different ways, but it's just a time to recognize that another way of saying this is like, besides letting it go, is like, this is a time to recognize that that era, that period of time, that's done. I'm ready for the dawn of a new day. And that's something that I think a lot of people miss about the death card, is that what we see here in this illustration is that there's the sun rising, and we have the dawn of a new day that comes after the death card, after we allow things to be done with, you know? So it's just like, if there's grieving that needs to happen, if there's something that needs to end, this is a time to just allow that and know that there is a dawning of a new day. It makes space for something new and revitalizing to come into your life. Now, we're still working with the waxing energy of the moon, right? So we're working with building that energy. This is a time where most people look to do manifestation rituals, or set their intentions, or create vision boards, or do rituals or ceremonies, or whatever it is. And here's one thing that I would say. Yes, normally that is a good time from new to full moon, to that waxing, that building momentum towards what you're creating and want to build and manifest and create in this world. However, because this is a very different season that we're in, when the light gets eclipsed, as I was talking about before, when that light gets eclipsed and it casts those shadows, that creates this, it's a place out of time that creates this chaotic energy. And so with the energies being chaotic, that means they can go any which way. Even when you think you're super clear about like what you are doing a ritual for, or what you are putting your intention forward for, it can manifest in these like twisty kind of ways that we wouldn't really expect, because chaos cannot be controlled. That's the essential like energy and meaning behind chaos. Chaos is chaos. You cannot control chaos. And so this is, you can read about it. It's not a time that is recommended to do your new moon rituals that you do, whatever they are. I would highly, highly recommend waiting a few days, even though, like, don't be scared of the Mercury retrograde. Like, even though Mercury retrograde is happening, maybe give it till that weekend, like, and see like that time, and go ahead and create and do your manifestation stuff or whatever you're doing at that time, mainly because it'll give a little bit of space from the intensity of that energy from the eclipse, you know. And Mercury retrograde is nothing to be afraid of. It's just that it's like, it's asking us to slow things down, to pause before we like send that email or send that text or have that conversation, or, you know, if you can't help it and you have to sign a contract, sign that contract. It's like, it's going over, revisiting, revising, and slowing it down. So it doesn't mean that you can't work with the energy. We're still in a waxing phase. And I think that for the eclipse, this is the time to just kind of like sit back and just kind of like watch the show unfold, like see what comes to you and what comes up and what gets activated, and then allow that to inform how you're going to work with things. So we picked a card here for still working with the new moon. As I like to do, I like to pick a card that points to what you're being told to pour your time, energy, and attention into, what you're being told to work on seeding and growing and like building towards, right? And we have the 8 of Laurels here. And the 8 of Laurels is certainly about working with your craft, like continuing to develop and work with your craft. Very much aligned with this particular card. I'm really loving like how in alignment this card actually is, right? So the 8 of Laurels is definitely this time to work on perfecting your craft, work on mastering your craft, right? You're looking to sharpen your edge with your skill set in this arena. And even if you are a leader in your field in some way, there's always some kind of learning or like, you know, growth that we can have in our particular chosen field where we are a leader. Then maybe it's about learning to be a more effective leader or a more inspired leader, or to how to bring community together, especially being an Aquarius sun or Aquarius rising, right? And so we also have the advice that's coming through as being the 7 of Cups. You know, the cool thing about the 7 of Cups is that it's like you have choice. You have lots of possibility. There's just like making the decision. And sometimes it can be overwhelming when we have so many decisions, we don't know which one to pick, and it can feel confusing or overwhelming. And so, you know, yes, this is it can feel like there's a two-edged sword, right? Like I would say that this card is showing up to be like, hey, you have a lot of options. You have a lot of things to choose from. You just need to widen your perspective to see them if you're not seeing them. And if you are, and you're feeling overwhelmed by that, and you're just like feeling confusion or overwhelm, get yourself out of being stuck in fantasy land and get grounded and realistic about it and make a decision from there. Like you've got to choose something. You can't just let all of these things be up in the air forever. You know, I know that from personal experience that feels challenging. However, you can do that. So this is, oops, I didn't have it in frame. Sorry about that, you guys. So you can have this, you can make a decision, and it's really about that. It's getting the clarity, doing what you need to do to have the clarity that you need to move forward with exactly this. So I feel like this all comes together pretty clearly. I would say, if you want to get more of like the full rounded picture, check out your monthly reading for April for Aquarius, and I'll have that up on the screen here somewhere. So I hope that this was helpful. Definitely give the video a like if this felt helpful at all for you, and like and subscribe and do all the things, like hit the notification bell. It definitely helps with me building this channel a lot. And also, you'll get to know about all of the videos that come out as they come out so that you'll know. Anyway, thanks for being here. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.